Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us again today. We are so lucky to have Dr. C. Nicole Mason here with us today. I'm going to first read her bio, and then we're going to jump into the questions. Recognized by Fortune magazine as one of the world's 50 greatest leaders, Dr. C. Nicole Mason is the president and CEO of Future Forward Women, a bold new initiative to build women's power and influence in the U.S. They unite and support catalytic leaders, organizations, and changemakers committed to propelling lasting change in the lives of women, girls, and families. Nicole was named one of Glamour magazine's 100 influential women leaders and Washingtonian magazine's 500 most influential people in Washington, D.C. She also won the highly competitive New Executive Award from the Open Society Foundations and was honored as a Thrive Leader by the Kresge Foundation. Additionally, she's an inaugural Ascend Fellow at the Aspen Institute in Washington, D.C. Nicole delivered a dynamic and well-received TED Talk on the gift of being difficult and the power of disruption. Before Future Forward Women, she served as the president/CEO of the Institute for Women's Policy Research and the Women of Color Policy Network at New York University's Robert F. Wagner Graduate School of Public Service, the nation's only research and policy center focused on women of color at a nationally ranked school of public administration. Dr. Mason was also the youngest person in women of color to lead IWPR, one of the major inside the Beltway think tanks in Washington, D.C. For the past 2 decades, Dr. Mason has spearheaded research on issues related to economic security, pay equity, poverty, women's issues, entitlement reforms, policy formation, and political participation among women and communities of color, and racial equity. At the start of the pandemic, she coined the term she-cession to describe the disproportionate impact of employment and income losses on women. Dr. Mason is the author of Born Bright, a young girl's journey from nothing to something in America, and has written hundreds of articles on women, poverty, and economic security. Her writing and commentary have been featured in the New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, NBC, CBS, The Washington Post, Marie Claire, The Progressive, Essence, Bustle, Big Think, Miami Herald, Democracy Now!, and numerous NPR affiliates, among others. Nicole serves on the board of All Our Kin, the Jeremiah Program, and Dolores Barr Weaver Policy Center. Thank you again, Dr. Mason, for being here with us today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. And nobody reads the whole bio anymore. So I really appreciate that, and I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. So, our first question is just a little bit about kind of your trajectory and how you landed where you are now. The first question is, how has your upbringing and life experiences, how have they influenced your decision to pursue your current career path?
So I was raised by a single mother. She was a teenage mom and had me when she was 16, and my brother shortly thereafter, and had a really rough and tumble upbringing. Homelessness. We benefited from many social programs here in the US. And when I got to college, first person in my family to graduate from high school and to go to college, I was in a class and they were talking about poverty and social programs. And all the programs, Head Start, SNAP, um, TANF, were all programs that I benefited from as a child, but I didn't know those programs were for poor people. And in that class, um, when they were first talking, like a wave of shame and embarrassment sort of washed over me, and I sort of lower down in my seat. And then as the conversation went on, I sat up straight, I participated, and for the first time, I had language for my experiences growing up. And really, that is what sparked my passion in terms of policy change, thinking about structural and systemic barriers, and really wanting to shift narratives around poverty and economic security, and more importantly, thinking about women and why women are half of the population, but more likely to live in poverty, and all of these things. So I felt very fortunate to be able to find my passion very early on.
Thank you for sharing that. And kind of with that in mind, to kind of set up the next few questions. These questions are a little bit more abstract, but I think that's okay because it's important to talk about how we deal with these issues rather than just talking about the issues themselves. So, kind of segueing into our next question, how should we be responding in this moment of heightened social and political tension? I know that's a big one, but
That is like the biggest question. Like, if we had the answer to that question, I tell you, we would be in a really different place. But I can tell you how I've been thinking about it. The first is I think that we need to approach this moment not in fear, but in possibility. Because I think there are a lot of things that are causing us fear, that is, stoking division and keeping us separate. And I think in this moment, we need to be focused on the things that bring us together, the things that we have in common, our humanity, our shared stories, our values. And it sounds really, I don't know, hokey, but I think focusing on the love. So I believe that the opposite of fear is love. And so when you are motivated by fear, that's when you see all the tension and the division, the fighting. But if you are motivated by love and finding the connection and seeing the humanity in another person or another group, then you want the best. You want policies that work for families. You want to make sure that everybody has their basic needs met. You're not worried that if I do well, that means I'm worse off. You don't have that kind of thinking. And I think in this moment, that's where we need to put our energy and efforts to combat all of the division and tension. Like, you can't fight fear with more fear or hate with more hate.
I know you talked a little bit earlier about kind of the classroom setting, but kind of to zoom in a little bit, what does it actually look like to work across our differences across race, gender, class, and beliefs, and to build that real connection and solidarity?
So I think we just have to do it. We all know how to connect with people. We do it in our communities, we do it in our neighborhoods, and in some instances, when we're in diverse, classrooms, we do it there. And for me, it's about sharing stories, talking about my life, you sharing about your life, your experiences, the things that are making you upset. There's always a cause, there's always a reason. And when someone is talking about how they've been slighted or the grievances that they feel, what they're mostly talking about is not being seen, not feeling heard, not feeling visible, or being passed by or passed over. And so if we can get to that, like the reason for it, as opposed to the outcome, like I just hate this thing, then we can create solutions, we can create understanding. And I don't think we've done a lot of that. So, but that really begins by asking why. Like, why do you feel that way? Or, what happened? Or hearing someone's story and experiences. And, I believe that when you hear someone's story and their experiences, you can't deny their humanity. And you also have a new entry point into a bigger conversation.
Kind of zooming in even further on that point, at a time when the media is super polarized and it feels like certain communities are being targeted, how can we stay meaningfully connected to one another in a time where everything feels increasingly divided and isolating?
So, um, I've been very disappointed in the media, especially mainstream media, um, because, you know, I I love writing. I have been a student. I've been writing actually since the second grade. I was writing in my student newspaper in the second grade or so. That's when I got the writing bug. And so I've always considered journalism and writing, and wrote in college as well, and written, in other outlets now. But I think that journalism and journalists have a responsibility to the truth. They have a responsibility to the facts. And I think um, a responsibility to helping us understand our world. And I think that today the media has shrugged their responsibility and has become, an institution that I don't recognize. And I think that's really very alarming because in this moment, we do need truth tellers. We need people to help us to understand this moment without cowering or being fearful of retribution or backlash. And so what that has meant is that normal everyday citizens have filled in the gap and are, helping to frame the story, helping people understand. And some of those voices are very clarifying, and some of those voices are, continue to sow chaos. So in this moment, I do think there's opportunity for um, everyday citizens, young people, um, you know, older people to talk about what they're seeing and talk about the strategies and what we should be doing in response. And one of the things I do like about social media, there's a lot of things that I think can be really toxic, is that it's a great equalizer. Like if you want to say something, you can say something. And, I think that's a great thing in this moment. But, again, the dark side is that it has been weaponized, but I think that there are more people with good things to say. I think that there are more people who want to be connected, who who are more values aligned than not.
With an eye towards the future, I wanted to ask you, what does leadership need to look like right now? And how can we make space for informed, future-focused leaders of all genders and orientations to rise to this occasion?
So I think in this, everybody wants to be an influencer. Everybody wants to be somebody. Everybody wants to go viral. But that's not the purpose of leadership. Even if a leader goes viral, that does not make them a good leader. We can just look at the president of the United States. He goes viral almost every day. There's endless coverage, but that doesn't make you a good leader. And I think that when I think about leadership in this moment, what we need are people who are not concerned with fame or infamy or, likes or going viral, and people who are willing to do the work and, hear the stories and articulate a vision for the most of us, who's not interested in one-upping or um, owning someone in a conversation or a debate. So for me, real leadership in this moment looks like care, it looks like empathy, it looks like making sure that the values and the things that we all say we care about are front and center. The other thing I'd like to say about leadership, especially in this moment, I think we're all looking for someone really big, really charismatic, some one person to come in and fight our fight for us. And that's not how leadership works. It's not one person fighting a battle against another person. It's all of us, individuals, coming together and demonstrating our own leadership in our own way, in our own communities, in our own neighborhood. Like there is no David, in the story of David and Goliath. Like we're waiting for a David or we're waiting for another Goliath. That's not it. And so for me, leadership looks like you doing your work here, me doing my work here, my neighbor doing their work, and also working towards a collective vision or the collective good.
In the spirit of kind of working together, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that. So, as you know, right now we're not facing just one issue, but there's a plethora of things. We have reproductive rights, immigration, inflation, economic instability. How do we start connecting those dots and building coalitions across interconnected challenges?
So you know what? I think we just do it. Like, so I don't even understand what the rocket science is behind this, like why people believe that it's rocket scientists. We can just go back to history. So we've been talking a lot about authoritarianism and fascism and the history and like history repeating itself. The history that we're not focusing on, that we know that works, is the history of winning and the history of success. no movement, whether it's the civil rights movement, the women's movement, any movement for change, the only way that it's been successful is through coalition building. You need men, you need women, you need blacks, you need whites, you need, Asian folks, you need queer folks, you need, poor people, you need rich, everybody working towards a collective goal. That's how you win. That's how the civil rights movement was won. That's how the women's rights movement, the wins that we had there, the LGBTQ movement, any movement, if you want to study any social progressive movement in the United States that's created large scale change, it has been in coalition. But what coalition requires is that you see people's humanity, you include them in the decision making, um, everyone benefits. It's part of a bigger, larger vision, all those things. And so to me, it's a no-brainer. But somehow we've forgotten how to do that. Like literally, we've forgotten that, like, oh, that is how you win. That's how you make big change. We're trying to like search around for like, I don't know, some magic new sort of strategy, but the one that has worked will work again.
While we're still kind of talking about history, I wanted to ask you a little bit about what an issue that feels like we're moving backwards. So when public figures like Pete Hegseth amplify extremist views like repealing the 19th Amendment, what does that signal about where we are as a nation in terms of gender equality? Even looking back to movements around women's suffrage, as you mentioned, in the ERA, and how should we be responding to these things?
So one of the things we need to do in this moment is take these things seriously. You know, what gets tossed out as a like seemingly crazy, wacky idea, like repealing the 19th Amendment, becomes the public discourse. In a couple months, that will be the debate we're having about whether or not women should have the right to vote. So one of the things I'm imploring us to do is to not ignore, not to pretend that it wasn't said, or to dismiss these kinds of outrageous comments as some like unhinged person saying something that's impossible, because what we've seen, especially with regard to women's rights, and even voting rights, is that what seems impossible 6 months ago or unimaginable becomes reality in the next 6 months or another year. And we've seen it over the last 4 or 5 years, like that really be the case. So um now one of the things I want to say about why, I think we also need to ask why some of the are more outrageous things are happening and also being said, is because the only way that you can um when things are shifting, women are more empowered, racial and ethnic minorities and LGBT people, have rights, their full bundle of rights, which is all anyone is asking for, like to be treated equally and with the same protections under the law as white men, basically. Um, is that the only reason you can make sure that people don't have their rights is to make it so they don't. And so how you do that is strip the rights, strip away their ability to participate fully in a democracy. And what that leaves is a small group of people making the decisions for the most of us. And that's not democracy. That is not a democracy. But that's the only way they can win, is by making sure that we don't have a say. And that's not a democracy, but we know that. But we also need to act as though that is what's happening and believe that's what's happening.
History also tells us how authoritarian regimes rise, but what does it tell us about how to win against them? I know you mentioned this a little bit briefly right now. What can we learn from past social movements that succeeded through coalition building?
So that's the thing. Like, so, everybody's like watching for the signs of authoritarianism, like, oh, we gotta, oh, there's another one. He's doing this thing. He's weaponizing the military, he's installing loyalists. Yeah. Um, but what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? Um, frankly, most of us are asleep at the wheel, if I were just going to be honest about it. Um, the political will and the that it takes to fight back authoritarianism, we don't have it right now. We just don't have it. It's not happening. Like there is no, it's not happening. And I'm not sure why it's not happening. I think, sometimes people feel powerless or fearful, and don't feel connected, and also have that feeling or idea that like, well, if it's not happening to me directly, then I don't have to worry about it. And, like even with when we think about like the issue of immigration, like people are like, well, it's horrible, but I'm not being stopped. My family's not being taken apart. And you can do that on any issue. Well, reproductive rights. Well, I'm not having children. I don't want children, so it doesn't matter to me. But truth of the matter is that it's even if you don't believe you're personally impacted by these issues, the bigger the bigger overarching issue for me is about our humanity, our shared humanity, um, our collective good, our vision for a just and right society. Um, you know, everybody gets a voice, or everyone gets a say. Like those are the things, even if you don't care about any of those things or you feel like they're not impacting you, these other larger things that we say we hold valuable to us as a country, as a nation, or even as a human being, those are the things that should be getting us out of the bed and into the streets or on social media or talking to our neighbors, like those things. So I don't care. Like you don't have to you can be anti-abortion. I said we need everybody. You can be I don't care. Let us align on the values and the things that we say we believe in, even if we're not aligned on 100% of all the things.
I feel a lot like, as you mentioned, that people are kind of asleep behind the wheel, so to speak. But I also feel like there's a deep sense of anxiety amongst the public. And I think maybe I feel that a lot because I live in DC and I'm kind of surrounded by it a lot. I wanted to ask, to what degree do you think coalition building is happening now? If it is happening, how strong is it, do you think? And if it's not happening, what would it take to kind of get to that point again?
So it is happening. I think that, I think a good demonstration of a coalition building or even sort of a show of force was the No Kings rally. Everybody was out. I live in a neighborhood with mostly elderly people, and they were out protesting and or with their signs, and it was cross race or cross gender, like everybody was out. So I think that it's happening. I think that that kind of effort needs to be sustained. And I also think that we need to go back to um, the strategies that we know that work. I think organizing with your neighbor, talking to your neighbor, because those are the people you trust. Like I trust my neighbor. If Howard, my neighbor, walked over here and said, Nicole, I want to tell you about something. I need your help. Let's do this thing. I'm more likely to say yes because I know Howard. I trust Howard. And that's how it is all across the country. That's how it is on college campuses. That's how it is in our workplaces. Even when you read about the women's movement, um, women's secretaries who are stuck in the secretary pool were talking to other women about you should subscribe to Miss Magazine. You should do this. It was peer to peer. And they're like, oh, okay, well, I didn't know about that. Well, let me do that. And that's how the Miss Magazine grew. And so like those are the sort of tactics and strategies, very human, very high touch. Nobody goes to a rally because they saw it on social media. Like people think like you can post something on social media and people are going to show up. That's not why people show up. People show up when they feel connected. People show up when they feel like whatever is being asked of them aligns with their own values, their own sense of purpose. And right now, we're not doing a good job of helping people to make the connections.
I really love what you just shared about making sure that, you start with your neighbor first. You start with the people closest to you and you build your community outward like that. My last question for you is kind of one that I ask all my guests. It's kind of our advice column. What would be your advice for Gen Z, or what are you looking for in the next generation? What can we help with? What do we need to get mobilized on? What should we be focused on?
So, so I have 15-year-old twins. They are Gen Z. And I have two pieces of advice is to find out for yourself. Like do the research, know for yourself so that even if you're trying to figure out what you believe and what you think, and your parents, my children get their values, and when they have a question about something, they come to me and ask me what I think, and so I tell them. But what I want for them to be is a critical thinker, to make understanding and meaning of something for themselves. And that's harder to do because social media, everybody's an expert. And so what I want them to be is their own expert, like have their own internal compass, for what's right or wrong, and what's just or unjust. Because once you have that foundation, and once you know how to think critically, nobody can take that away from you. And that's, I'm a professor. I've taught many, many young people, and I say, you might not remember anything I teach you in this class. Like that, like, gosh, I don't remember a lot from when I was in college. I said, but my job here is to teach you how to be a critical thinker and take ideas apart and put them back together again. And that's a skill that you're going to use the rest of your life. And the other thing is, my other piece of advice is to not be afraid, to not be fearful, to get out there and do something and make some noise. Nothing is going to happen. I know that from experience because when I was young, I went to every rally, every something that was happening, and it was fun. It was community building, but it also helped me to feel very connected. And the administration knows, I'm going to say this, the administration knows the power of young people mobilizing. And that is why, in my opinion, you're seeing all the crackdowns on college campuses. He's going after young people because he knows that young people are it. They have, limitless energy. They can stay up all night. They're strong. They're vocal. They have something to say. And if you squash that, you do squash the next generation of thinkers, of movers, of politicians, of organizers. And so, frankly, it's a smart strategy. But I think that if I were going to say anything, it's just to, you know, do something, do anything.
Well, that is a great note to end on. I think that's going to be the quote of the day. Young people are it. So, Dr. Mason, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was so great to talk to you.